Every year, mountains of supplies are consumed, and millions of pieces of equipment are distributed to maintain the infrastructure of one of the most powerful countries on the planet. To meet this enormous demand, thousands of tons of materials, like steel, wood, and cotton, must be processed every single day. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself how a large portion of military uniforms, office furniture, and federal government equipment in America is actually produced? And more importantly, who really makes it? The answer is hidden behind razor wire and concrete walls. In the United States, there is a federal program that puts hundreds of incarcerated men to work in industrial factories inside the prisons themselves, performing heavy, repetitive, and specialized manual labor, paying wages that range between 23 cents and $1.15 per hour. That program is called UNICOR Federal Prison Industries, and it actively operates in 76 facilities across the country. In today's video, we are going inside those facilities and showing you exactly how hundreds of prisoners, with their own hands, manufacture products that supply the most powerful government in the world. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to see will change the way you look at the objects around you. To understand the full scale of this debate, we need to look at the most extreme contrast that exists when it comes to prisons in the Western world. In El Salvador, the prison reality is one of punitive confinement and absolute isolation. 70 kilometers from the capital, in an isolated zone under complete military surveillance, stands the CECOT, built in 2022, with capacity for up to 40,000 inmates, divided across 8 separate modules. The facility is guarded by 1,000 correctional officers, 600 army soldiers, and 250 military police. The construction cost was $115 million. The rules at SECOT are absolutely merciless. It is considered the strictest prison in the world, housing some of the most violent criminals on the planet, with individual sentences exceeding 500 years. Inmates sleep on metal bunk frames with no mattresses, have an extremely restricted diet, and spend 23 of every 24 hours confined in cells with capacity for up to 150 people. Food is served 3 times a day, with each plate weighed to contain exactly 450 grams. By government mandate, meat is never served. 3 rival gangs share the same cell, the same space, the same routine of total deprivation. In the United States, the reality is radically different, but not necessarily simpler. The American prison is not just a place of confinement. It is a mega-industrial complex. Hundreds of incarcerated men wake up every day, line up, put on their work uniforms, and walk to the production warehouse. There, they stand on their feet for hours. They lift heavy loads. They operate machines. They sew, they weld, they saw, they assemble with their hands. The time behind bars has been transformed into a billion-dollar machine, where the physical and manual labor performed by these men at massive scale feeds a production chain that very few people on the outside even know exists. The first stop is the textile workshop of the UNICOR facilities, responsible for manufacturing clothing, prison uniforms, and military uniforms. Here, the production process is continuous. The factories operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without stopping. And the men who maintain that pace are hundreds of incarcerated individuals, sitting side by side in long rows of industrial sewing machines. Colossal rolls of heavy fabric arrive at the complex in trucks. The inmates themselves manually unload those rolls, carrying considerable weight to the cutting tables. At this stage, some facilities use industrial laser cutters that slice through dozens of layers of fabric simultaneously with micrometric precision. But human labor is indispensable. It is the inmates who position each layer of fabric on the table, align the patterns, verify the fit, and organize the cut pieces into batches for the next stage. The laser cut is fast and precise, but without the hands of these men organizing and feeding the process, the line stops. The cut pieces then move to the sewing lines. And this is where the human scale of the process becomes most visible. Hundreds of inmates sit at high-speed industrial sewing machines, shoulder to shoulder, in enormous rooms lit by fluorescent light. Each man has a specific function on the line. One sews the sleeves. The next closes the body of the garment. Another attaches the collar. The following one fastens the buttons. The pace is demanding and constant. Production quotas are real and monitored. Workers trained within the prison system itself inspect each batch, running eyes and hands over every seam, every hem, every finishing detail. Many of these uniforms will be worn by the United States Armed Forces in the field, and the quality requirement is military grade. Each piece goes through visual inspections, dimensional measurements, and fabric resistance tests. The result is a production line, so organized and efficient that it compares to the largest private textile manufacturing operations on the planet, producing thousands of uniforms per week, made by hand, by men who sleep in a cell 200 meters away. Leaving the garment section, the quiet sound of sewing machines gives way to the thunder of hydraulic presses, industrial saws, and welding arcs. In the metalwork section, metal chairs, beds, bunk frames, and heavy structures for government use are manufactured, and the majority of that process passes through the hands of the inmates. The process begins with steel bars and coils arriving at the warehouse. The inmates manually feed the cutting machines, positioning the metal in the feeders and verifying measurements before each operation. CNC systems, computer numerical control, manage the precision of the cuts. But it is the human operator, the trained prisoner at the station, who carries the piece, positions it, activates the machine, and removes the processed material. At every stage, there is a man in gloves and safety glasses doing the physical work that keeps the line running. In the bending area, heavy presses curve the chair legs and bunk frame components to exact angles. The inmates insert each steel tube into the roller system, verify the positioning, and activate the press. When the piece comes out bent, they remove it, inspect it visually, and pass it to the next stage. It is physical, repetitive, and demanding work, performed shift after shift by incarcerated men. The welding stage is one of the most specialized in the entire process. Qualified welders, trained within the prison system itself, over months, join the pieces using resistance electric welding. Each man holds the components, aligns the joints with precision, applies the current, and verifies that the weld is solid. There is no margin for error. A weak weld on a bunk frame or a federal office chair is rejected at inspection. The final finish is electrostatic powder coating, where the inmates themselves hang each piece on hooks along the paint line, ensuring the powder coating covers every centimeter of the surface before entering the curing oven. UNICOR facilities also house high-capacity sawmills and woodworking shops where tables, wooden chairs, and cabinets for federal offices across the country are produced at scale, and where the manual labor of the inmates is the central element of every step in the process. The line begins with raw logs arriving at the warehouse. Groups of inmates carry and position each log in the sawing systems, feeding the machines and removing the processed lumber at each stage. After debarking and longitudinal cutting into boards and strips with exact measurements digitally defined, the sliced wood moves to the sanding benches, where inmates work piece by hand and with manual sanders, until every surface reaches the required finish. In the furniture assembly stage, the manual work is total. The inmates apply the resin-based glue, position the strips and panels, adjust the fit with their hands, and activate the presses that bond the assembly together. Each drawer is assembled individually. Each hinge is screwed on by hand. Every piece of furniture that leaves that warehouse passed through dozens of hands before being packaged. In the electronics and recycling sector, the work is equally manual and requires constant attention. Inmates receive discarded electrical cables, obsolete government equipment, and used electronic components. With simple tools, pliers, screwdrivers, cutters, they dismantle each piece of equipment, component by component, separating copper from aluminum, circuit boards from plastic housings, reusable components from material for disposal. The copper and aluminum precisely separated by these hands return to the market as high-value recycled raw material. UNICOR facilities process thousands of tons of this material per year, ton by ton, piece by piece, man by man. To sustain this working city behind bars, the internal food production facilities also run at full capacity, operated by the inmates themselves. In the prison bakery, groups of men carry flour sacks, feed the industrial mixers, and monitor the fermentation process. When the doughs are ready, they shape them manually, position them in the baking pans, and send them to the high-capacity continuous ovens that bake hundreds of loaves per hour. At the end of the production day, whether chairs, uniforms, furniture, or electronics, every item goes through a final quality inspection performed by inmates trained specifically for that function. Those that pass inspection move to the packaging section, where groups of men work in line, boxing, labeling, sealing, and organizing each product into boxes and pallets. The hands that carry, stack, wrap the stretch film, and position the pallets at the loading docks are the same hands that produced everything from the beginning. Just a few hours later, trucks cross the maximum security gates, carrying those products to federal offices, military bases, and government facilities across the United States. What you just saw is not fiction. It is not exaggeration. It is what happens every day in 76 facilities spread across the United States, with hundreds of incarcerated men who wake up, put on their work uniform, and spend 8 hours doing physical, manual, and specialized labor for less than the price of a cup of coffee. On one side, there are those who argue that this system offers structure, learning, and purpose to people who would otherwise sit idle behind a wall. On the other, there are those who point out that a captive workforce with no ability to negotiate wages, no ability to refuse the work, and no access to the basic rights of any free worker is not rehabilitation. It is something else entirely. The efficiency of this machine is undeniable. The scale is formidable, and the debate about what it represents, justice, rehabilitation, or exploitation, is one of the most important and least conducted conversations in contemporary American society. Now you know what is behind the walls. Now you know who makes what you use. And that information, once you have it, cannot be ignored. If this video made you think, hit the like button. It helps this story reach more people. Share it with someone you think needs to know. And subscribe to the channel for more videos that go beyond the comfortable version of things and show you what is actually underneath. See you in the next one.